All right, guys, so Donald Trump did a Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk yesterday, and it was an unmitigated disaster. So I'm going to walk you through it. Now, by the way, Trump should have known this is probably not the best idea because other presidential candidates have done this with Elon Musk, and every single one was a colossal failure. For those of you who don't remember, this is how Ron DeSantis launched his presidential campaign in a Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. And the thing was fucking broken. It didn't work for a really extended period of time. When they finally got it to work, DeSantis' mic was fucked up and was coming in way too hot, and they had to mute him and then bring him back. The sound quality is trash, even when it's working well. So it was just a terrible idea. It really, from the very beginning, sort of tainted Ron DeSantis' campaign and was a harbinger of things to come. So I think the only reason Trump even agreed to do this is because he knows that he's struggling. He knows that the polls are down for him. I think he's kind of panicking. I think he's kind of desperate. So he decided, fuck it, let's go ahead and do it. Now, guess what happened? The exact same thing that happened to DeSantis happened to Donald Trump. The thing didn't fucking work for like 30 or 40 minutes. Everybody was sharing their screenshots where it said, the Twitter Spaces is unavailable or you're getting some sort of error message. I think it briefly went up and then came back down and nobody could get in. And Elon the day before had come out and said, guys, don't worry, I'm going to test it to make sure everything's good to go for the Trump interview. And then the Trump interview came around and it glitched out, it shit the bed, and everybody was laughing at it. So I don't know exactly how long it was. It was probably like 30 or 40 minutes that the thing wasn't working. And then eventually they got it to work. So right off the bat, colossal disaster, amateur hour. In the year of our Lord 2024, you can't get a fucking live stream to work. And this is a live stream not even with video. I mean, come on, man. This is a joke. So now let's get to what happened in the interview. So Trump was slurring nonstop. And I don't know, you call it a slur, you can call it a lisp, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But at first I thought, well, I guess this is just Twitter Spaces and it makes you sound sort of lispy. And in fact, Michael Tracy came out and said, I've done Twitter Spaces and it made me sound kind of lispy. But then come to find out the Trump people recorded a separate video on like an iPhone or something of Trump doing the interview with Elon Musk. And even in that video, he sounded kind of slurry. So I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if there's something wrong with his dentures or whatever. But this happened one time when he was president. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was giving a speech from the White House. And at the very end of it, he said, God bless the United States of America. And that moment went mega viral. And in that instance, honestly, the lisp or the slur was way worse. It sounds like he maybe was having a minor issue with his dentures or something this time. But that was something that was very, very apparent. Now, by the way, I should point out that Elon Musk, when Twitter Spaces wasn't working, he comes out and says, oh, we're under a massive DDoS attack. Well, a number of reporters came out and said, we fact-checked that. It's not true at all. The rest of Twitter is working perfectly fine. Your shitty Twitter Spaces thing just wasn't prepared for such a big event. So colossal L. Now, to the substance of the interview. Guys, in 2015 and 2016, at least Trump used to do adversarial interviews, and they would be controversial, and they would be somewhat interesting. This was two old billionaires sucking and fucking each other. They were just all day long jacking each other off, licking each other's tiny peckers. That was the whole fucking thing. It was insufferable. There was not a single difficult or interesting question asked throughout the entire thing. Honestly, absolutely pathetic. I don't know how anybody could listen to this and think it's serious or think it's going to help the campaign in any way, shape, or form. So to get to some of the substance here, Trump said he wants to close the Department of Education. He just casually said that in the midst of this long conversation. I always find it amazing when people say bombastic and idiotic things in a nonchalant way. That's exactly what happened in this instance. Trump said that he's okay with climate change and sea level rising because we'll have, quote, more oceanfront property. That's like the exact same thing that Ben Shapiro said in a video from like 15 years ago or something like that he still gets mocked for to this day. And the guy who's the Republican nominee is saying that publicly and is not embarrassed by it. I'm running out of ways to describe how sad and down this candidate and this campaign is, man. They also got into a weird back and forth on nuclear energy. So you had Elon was kind of trying to convince Trump that climate change is real and it's something we should take seriously. He was soft-pedaling it, but he was kind of trying to make that point. And Trump would pivot and say, I'm not really worried about climate change. I'm not worried about global warming. I'm worried about nuclear warming. The N-word. I'm worried about nuclear warming. And he would try to, use that to make a point about World War III, but also use that to make a point about how nuclear energy, it's really not the best. You got Fukushima, you got all these different problems, and, something happens, they say you can't go back for 2,000 years or whatever it is. That's really not good. And Elon was kind of trying to say, actually, nuclear energy isn't really as bad as many people think it is. But then it got super weird because Hiroshima and Nagasaki came up. And Elon was like, look, yeah, I mean, with Fukushima, it wasn't really that bad when push came to shove. And even with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they're now like thriving cities. And Trump goes, that's great. It's great. Like they're casually discussing the cities that got fucking nuked into oblivion. And they're like, hey, even in those situations, it wasn't all that bad. Oh my God. What are we doing here? What the fuck are we doing here? Then, of course, Trump spent a very long time talking about, it's so funny, he said he was never going to talk about this again when he got shot. Remember, he said that in his RNC speech, like, this is the last time I'm going to talk about it. Turns out that's not true. He rambled about that for like the first 20 minutes of the interview. Then, of course, there were multiple different instances where they went on for an extended period of time about how terrible immigrants are, about how evil immigrants are, about all the problems that immigrants bring into the country. Of course, virtually everything they said is factually untrue. Who's surprised by that? Also, just so everybody understands, when Elon first came here, he was an illegal immigrant for a while, so the arguments that they're making, in theory, would apply to his ass as well. But, guys, the crime thing, I can't get over the crime thing. I mean, I looked up the numbers last night as they were talking about it. Immigrants are 60% less likely to commit crimes, and undocumented immigrants are 37.1% less likely to commit crimes compared to native-born Americans. But they act like immigrants coming here is the end of the world and they're bringing all these problems, and it's just fundamentally not true, man. It's just not true. I know for my own life, personally, anecdotally speaking, every immigrant family I know, they're like the hardest working, most humble people that I've ever met in my life. And so I think the stereotype is exactly backwards, but they spent the entire time shitting on immigrants. It was absolutely disgusting. And then, of course, we got Trump continued to trot out the lie about Tim Walz, that he put tampons in boys' bathrooms. This has already been thoroughly debunked. He signed a bill that puts tampons in school bathrooms that are gender neutral and in school bathrooms that are the girls' bathroom, and it puts it in places like the nurse's office. It does not put it in boys' bathrooms, but they lie about it. Why? Because they hate trans people with a deep burning passion. They think they're icky, they think they're gross, and they think this is a way to tar Tim Walz as being super radical and, with the pro-trans agenda, and he wants to trans your kids, right? This is the implication of all the dumb bullshit that they say. So just repeating that lie, it doesn't matter that it was debunked 14 different ways. It doesn't matter that everybody knows it's false. He's going to keep saying it until the cows come home because he doesn't give a shit about the truth. He doesn't give a shit about the facts. He's using it as a smear, and he knows he's using it as a smear. Then just a couple more points here. So Elon says to Trump at one point, quote, during your first term as president, you were attacked relentlessly and often unfairly, but you didn't try to shut down the media or inhibit their freedom of speech. That says a lot about your belief in free speech. That drove me crazy when I heard him say that. Why? Trump sued CNN for $475 million, claiming libel and slander. Trump was just a few weeks ago on the warpath saying we should ban flag burning. That's something that is free speech as defined by the Supreme Court. That is protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and even conservative justices agreed with that. This is a guy who sued Bill Maher over a joke that he didn't like. This is a guy who says we should open up our libel laws to make it more like the UK, where they don't have freedom of speech. How the fuck can you give this guy credit and say, oh, he's such a staunch defender of free speech? No, Trump defends free speech as much as Elon defends free speech, which is not fucking at all. So I can't stand with the fucking narrativizing, guys. They've labeled themselves the West's defenders of freedom of speech, and it doesn't matter to people that their records don't fucking match up with it at all. It drives me. Trump said he wants to deport pro-Palestine protesters, who, by the way, he lies about and says they're all pro-Hamas. That's a fucking lie. Everybody knows that's a lie. But he wants to deport pro-Palestine protesters. Tell me again about how pro-free speech you are, and suck him off a little harder, Elon, about how pro-free speech he is. You guys are hacks. You guys are hacks. You guys are pathetic. I despise all of you with a burning passion. I want you to get that through your thick fucking skulls. Okay. And then, finally, last couple points here. Trump gave Elon credit for firing striking workers on the spot. There's a moment that went kind of viral where he says, You know, it's like the way you handle it, like you handle it with the workers. They go on strike, you go, that's okay, all of you are gone. You did it with, I won't say the name of the company, but you did it with somebody. I like the way you handle that, Elon. He was giving him credit for firing striking workers who were just trying to live a better life, to get more vacation time, to get better health benefits, to get higher wages. Trump was praising him for that. Trump is a guy that people still pretend is pro-worker. They still pretend he's a populist and he's anti-establishment. He's a fucking scab. He's a union buster, and he hates working people. He's stiffed working people who did stuff for him at his hotels and at his casinos and elsewhere. There's a long track record of him stiffing workers. He looks at Elon violating labor law and says, I love when you did that. That was great. Now, by the way, the UAW has since come out and they're bringing charges against them over this. And guess what? You guys are going to love this. The dishonest reaction I see from the right is they go, the UAW is anti-free speech. They're going after Trump and they're going after Elon because they believe in freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is dead and the UAW is killing it. This is the stuff they're saying. You fucking idiot. They're going after them for bragging about violating labor law and shitting on workers and destroying the lives of middle-class families. You cannot fire striking workers. You can't do that. That's a violation of labor law. It is deeply anti-worker, deeply anti-middle class, deeply elitist, deeply robber baron oligarch shit. And now you have morons pretending like, oh, Elon and Trump are defending free speech by bragging about how much they hate working people and fuck them over on a regular basis. Again, I hate these people. I can't deal with it. And then finally, Elon lied brazenly about how many views the interview got. He came out and said it has, when you look at all the different platforms and put them together, it had 1 billion views. No, it doesn't. That's the dumbest number I've ever heard in my life. You need your fucking head examined if you sincerely believe that got to 1 billion views. It's not even close to 1 billion views. He's probably just counting generic impressions as part of the views. So if you like scroll by it on your Twitter feed, they go, oh, they watched it. These guys are such liars. They're so dishonest. I don't know how anybody can take them seriously. They're the clowns of the world. And I'm so fed up with them, man. I'm so fucking fed up with this shit. God damn it. Anyway, even the Trump people should be embarrassed by this. Even his biggest fans should be embarrassed by this. Because again, at least in 2015 and 2016, he did fun stuff, right? He would go in the lion's den and fight with some host who disagreed with him and give us controversial moments and say edgy things, and he would rile up his own base, and you know, he would drive the news cycle. Now it was just boring. It was just tired. It was just stale. It was just two billionaire robber barons jacking each other off in front of the world, repeating their fortune cookie political slogans that they have memorized back to each other. So anyway, there you have it. Look, this has done nothing to rehabilitate the Trump campaign. They're on a downward trajectory, and I think they're going to stay there.